In a world where law enforcement and military forces cease to exist, the United States would face an unprecedented breakdown of law and order. The repercussions would ripple across society, affecting everything from local communities to global stability. This video explores a hypothetical scenario where the absence of these institutions leads to societal collapse, economic chaos, and international vulnerability. Each step of the crisis highlights the indispensable role of law enforcement and military in maintaining order and ensuring national security. Step 1. Breakdown of law and order. With the immediate removal of law enforcement, local communities would struggle to maintain a semblance of order. Although initial attempts might be made by community leaders or organized groups to uphold some degree of social structure, these efforts would likely prove ineffective in the face of rising anarchy. The lack of an authority figure to enforce laws would embolden individuals inclined toward criminal behavior, quickly spiraling into a drastic increase in violent crimes, theft, and vandalism. Neighborhoods would lose a sense of security as the fear of unchecked criminal activity escalates. The absence of law enforcement would also mean that there would be no centralized response to calls for assistance, leaving citizens vulnerable and exposed to the actions of those who might exploit the situation. The once reliable emergency response system would fade, making it challenging to address escalating crime rates effectively. Step 2. Rise of vigilantism. As crime rates soar, vigilant groups would inevitably emerge. These individuals or organizations, though initially motivated by a desire to protect their communities, would likely lack the restraint and accountability that trained law enforcement personnel provide. With no system of oversight, the actions of these vigilant groups could turn violent as they impose their own form of justice, clashing with rival groups over territory and ideology. Different factions could develop along ethnic, ideological, or geographic lines, with individuals banding together to protect their interests. Turf wars would erupt as these groups compete for control, further exacerbating violence. In a lawless environment, even well-intentioned vigilantes might engage in increasingly extreme methods to achieve security, resulting in a chaotic blend of sporadic justice and widespread conflict. Step 3. Societal collapse. As vigilantism grows and crime continues to escalate, communities would begin to fracture. Without a central authority to mediate disputes or enforce laws, society would likely split along ideological and ethnic lines, with people retreating to self-made, isolated groups for protection. This community division would undermine the very fabric of society, leading to tensions that could culminate in conflict and violence within and between groups. The impact would extend to the economy as well. The absence of law enforcement protection would leave businesses vulnerable to theft and vandalism, ultimately leading to closures, job losses, and an economic downturn. With widespread unemployment and limited access to resources, families would face extreme financial hardship. The ripple effect of economic disruption would deepen societal fractures, increasing desperation and resentment across various communities. Step 4. Basic services erosion. The erosion of law enforcement would have severe consequences for essential services, such as emergency medical assistance and firefighting. Without police protection, first responders would find it increasingly difficult to perform their duties safely. Response times would significantly slow down, leading to preventable tragedies and fatalities. Infrastructural maintenance would also be at risk. Roads, bridges, and utilities that rely on regular servicing would deteriorate due to neglect or vandalism, further hindering transportation and public health. Public transit systems and water supply infrastructure would likely falter under the strain, contributing to a lower standard of living in declining urban environments. Step 5. Emergence of warlordism. As formal governance disintegrates, power vacuums would open up, allowing local strawmen or warlords to rise in prominence. These figures would often seize control of territories through force and charisma, establishing rule over fragmented regions. Warlords might be former community leaders or even vigilant heads who gained influence through aggressive tactics. Such individuals would attempt to exert control over populations, perhaps instituting their own systems of governance to maintain dominance. In this environment, some disorganized groups would transform into organized militias, evolving into paramilitary forces capable of engaging in conflicts with other factions. A lack of accountability and oversight would reinforce cycles of violence as these groups vie for control, creating an unending loop of local conflicts and power struggles. Step 6. National fragmentation. With no federal authority to unify states or regions, the country would face the risk of national fragmentation. In this chaos, certain states or regions might break away from the federal structure, forming independent governance systems to maintain order. This disintegration of unity would likely lead to competition and conflict between states, transforming the U.S. into a patchwork of disconnected entities with differing governance models. The division would lead to substantial logistical challenges, as regions might implement borders or impose restrictions on the movement of goods and people. As living conditions decline, states would face a humanitarian crisis with widespread food, water, and healthcare shortages, fueling public unrest and potential uprisings. Step 8. Economic and infrastructure collapse. As disorder grows unchecked, the U.S. economy would face a full-scale collapse. Financial institutions and banks, lacking security and unable to operate without national governance, would shut down or severely limit operations, rendering currency nearly worthless. The collapse of the financial sector would eliminate people's savings, worsen unemployment, and increase poverty nationwide. Transportation networks, already strained by infrastructure neglect, would see major shipping routes break down entirely, halting the movement of goods, including essential resources like food, medical supplies, and fuel. Power grids, internet connectivity, and other critical infrastructure systems would fail without maintenance, leaving communities isolated and without basic services. Step 9. Resource conflicts and environmental degradation. In the wake of economic collapse and a lack of federal oversight, resource conflicts would intensify. Communities would struggle to secure clean water, food, and medical supplies, leading to clashes over resources, particularly in areas rich in natural assets. Unsanctioned mining, deforestation, and overuse of natural resources would escalate, causing significant environmental damage without any authority to enforce regulations. Over time, this exploitation would degrade land, water, and air quality, contributing to long-term public health crises and eroding ecosystems. As desperation grows, these conflicts would become fiercer, leading to violence, displacement, and even further fragmentation of communities across the country. Thank you for watching this. If you found this analysis thought-provoking and want more insights on topics like this, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you're the first to know when we release new content. Let us know in the comments what other scenarios you'd like us to cover. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.